On the 15th of January 1919, in the north end of Boston, a steel storage tank 50 feet tall and 90 feet across burst open. 2.3 million gallons of molasses came out of it in a single wave. The wave was 25 feet tall. It moved at roughly 35 miles an hour. It killed 21 people. The tank stood at 529 Commercial Street, on the harbor side of the north end. It belonged to the United States Industrial Alcohol Company through its Purity Distilling subsidiary. Industrial alcohol was distilled from molasses, and during the First World War, industrial alcohol was the feedstock for smokeless powder, the propellant in artillery shells. The tank was new. It had been built quickly in 1915 to hold incoming molasses shipments from the Caribbean before they were railed inland for distillation. From the day it went into service, it groaned. It dripped. Children in the surrounding tenements collected the leaking molasses in pails. The company's response, repeatedly, was to paint the tank brown so the leaks would not show. By January 1919, the war had ended, the powder demand had collapsed, and the tank held 2 1/3 million gallons of molasses awaiting distillation into beverage alcohol because national prohibition was about to start, and the distillery was racing to convert its inventory before the law cut it off. The morning of the 15th was unseasonably warm. The temperature had risen above freezing for the first time in days. Inside the tank, the contents were still close to the temperature of a fresh shipment delivered 2 days earlier, significantly warmer than the surrounding metal. Engineers later argued about whether this thermal mismatch was causally relevant. A few minutes after 12:30 in the afternoon, witnesses reported a sound described in eyewitness accounts as a long, low rumble, followed by a sharp report, like a machine gun. Steel rivets popped from the tank seams and shot horizontally across the street, embedding in nearby buildings. The tank wall sheared open. The molasses came out in one motion. 2.3 million gallons of viscous fluid, weighing roughly 13,000 tons, fell into the street as a single mass. The leading edge of the wave was about 25 feet tall. Its initial speed has been estimated by structural engineers at 35 miles an hour, though estimates vary. The wave struck the elevated railway across the street, twisting the steel supports and pushing one section off the rails. It crushed the firehouse next door. It lifted a truck and threw it through the side of a building. It picked up horses from the company's stables. It buried wagons. It tore tenement porches off their foundations. Inside it, people drowned in molasses. Others were crushed by the buildings collapsing around them. 21 died. About 150 were injured. The dead included drivers, dock workers, firefighters, residents of the tenements, and 2 children, Maria Distasio, age 10, and Pascual Ionosca, also 10, both struck while playing near the tank. The Boston Police, the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and U.S. Navy sailors from a nearby station all arrived within the first hour. They had to wade through molasses up to their waists. Several rescuers became stuck themselves and had to be pulled out. The recovery of the dead took 4 days. Some of the bodies were so deeply embedded that they were not recovered until the molasses was washed off them with salt water from the harbor. Cleanup of the streets, the elevated rail line, the firehouse, and the tenements took several weeks. Residents of the North End reported that on warm days for years afterward, the streets, the granite buildings, and the harbor itself smelled of molasses. The company did not dispute this account. 119 lawsuits were consolidated into a single case against the United States Industrial Alcohol Company. It became, at the time, one of the largest class action proceedings in Massachusetts history. The trial, in front of an auditor named Hugh Ogden, ran for 3 years. It heard testimony from thousands of witnesses. The company's defense was that the tank had been destroyed by a bomb that anarchists, of which the North End was perceived to have many, had detonated an explosive against the steel. The auditor rejected the bomb theory. He found the tank itself defective, under-engineered for the loads it carried, with steel walls roughly half as thick as the engineering of the time required, and approved by an inspector who could not read engineering plans. The auditor found the company negligent. Settlements totaled, in modern terms, somewhere in the tens of millions of dollars. The case is still cited today in American legal teaching as a foundation for modern American product liability and structural safety law. Massachusetts, in the immediate aftermath, required licensed engineers to sign and seal all major construction plans, a practice that was uneven before 1919 and became uniform after. Other states followed the chain of practices that produced the Boston tank. Built fast, inspected by a non-engineer, repainted to hide leaks, became more difficult, although by no means impossible, to repeat. The site at 529 Commercial Street is now a small public park. There is a plaque. The text on the plaque is short. It does not editorialize. It names the date, the company, the death toll, and the cause as found by the auditor. The Great Molasses Flood is a story people sometimes laugh at when they hear the headline. The headline is the part that sounds impossible. The rest of it, 21 dead, a 6-year trial, an under-engineered tank repainted to hide its leaks, is documented in court records that survive in the Massachusetts State Archives. A wave of molasses 25 feet tall really did come out of a tank in the north end of Boston on the 15th of January, 1919. People died of it. The smell stayed in the streets for years. The legal case wrote part of how American buildings are licensed. None of that, by itself, is funny. The headline is the part that sounds impossible. The rest of the story is what the headline is for.